to discuss questions related to election commissioners, election commission as well. So the first question is related to free and fair elections. Okay, the role of the election commission in ensuring free and fair elections, and what are the challenges it faces in the contemporary political environment. So the first question is related to free and fair elections. Now in the second question, we need to look upon the functions of the election commission of the India and reforms needed in the function of the election commission of the India. Any constitutional body, certain provisions related to reforms might be discussed so far. So therefore, the type of questions in which they ask, the first is free and fair elections. The second one is related to reforms. Now the third question is related to their independence of any body. We have to see the independence, the autonomy of that body. And the fourth one is related to the appointment of chief election commissioner and the election commissioners in India, right? Appointment, and there needs to be a reform in the appointment processes. The fifth one is related to the electoral malpractices and the moral code of conduct. These are the 5 areas in which questions related to election commissions arises. The first one is free and fair elections, reforms for the election commission, independence of the election commission, appointment of the chief election commissioner and other election commissioners, electoral malpractices and moral code of conduct. Now let us discuss the first question. Discuss the role of Election Commission of the India in ensuring the free and fair elections, highlight the challenges it faces in the contemporary political environment. First, for the role of Election Commission of the India, we need to mention the article. Article 3, 2, and then you have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You need to remember it comes in 324. Is one of the important article, which is 324. There's an article which is related to the Election Commission of India. Okay, you need to remember this article. It is very important. 324. Whenever you see 324, you need to remember it is Election Commission of India. This article grants the Election Commission of the India the power to supervise, direct, and control. So we use keywords like supervise. You need to direct people, and you also need to control the elections. This is the elections to the parliament. The elections to the first thing is the parliament. Parliamentary elections, state legislature elections, and offices of the president. We have the president and vice president. So the Election Commission of the India, under we have Article 324. So Article 324 gives power to the Election Commission of the India to supervise, control and direct elections to the Parliament, State Legislature and Office of President and Vice President, whole Parliament, Lok Sabha and as well as Rajya Sabha, State Legislature, State Legislative Assembly, State Legislative Council. The conduct of the elections, free and fair elections. Next, we have to discuss free and fair elections. Ensures free, fair, and transparent elections through measures like voter education, code of conduct enforcement, use of EVMs and VVPATs. Now, let us discuss what does a free and fair elections mean, right? So what does the term free and fair elections mean? Whenever there is free and fair elections mentioned, what do we write? Now we have to remember that first, those who vote for the election, they need awareness. So voter awareness, and then you call the education. This is what we call the fairness in the election. Everybody knows the election process. They are completely aware, and free and fair elections mean everyone participate. and there is no differentiation, discrimination, and equal opportunity is provided for all the people to participate. Equal opportunity to participate, right? Then the voters are being aware. Next, code of conduct. They behave very well, right? They behave in certain ways such that the natural election system is not disrupted. How do they behave? The code of conduct. And what, on the day of election, what do we use? We use EVMs for free, fair elections. There is no, uh, you know, no fraud pollings, right? No booth capture can be ensured using EVMs because EVMs has a time framework. Only in the time framework votes can be casted. You cannot, but when you are using papers, you can capture a booth and you can put as much of papers, ballot papers into the ballot, right? But EVM has certain time in which the votes are being casted. So we will be having the EVM and VVPAT. VVPAT is again a verification for the voters such that this EVM is not corrupted. Okay, so these are the things for free and fair elections. We need to ensure these things. First, everyone are having equal opportunity to participate in that election, and who selects the candidates, the voters, right? So the voters need to have education. I mean, be educated about the voting system. The voters must be aware, and the election participants, they need to follow moral code of conduct. And during the day of elections, we use EVMs and VVPATs. This is how we ensure free and fair elections and a transparent elections, right? Now, moral code of conduct. There is a definition for moral code of conduct. Electoral roll management, election expenditure. Can include a few points for the free and fair elections. Moral code of conduct is during the campaign. There is an ethical campaign. Political parties and the candidates, right? We have political parties and even the candidates under the political parties. They all follow ethical campaigning, right? They follow ethical campaigning. This is what moral code of conduct is all about. So the next thing is electoral roll management. We need to Electoral roll is nothing but the list of voters, right? So the list of voters must be prepared with accuracy and inclusiveness. Nobody is left behind, and those who are eligible, they must be they must be included in the voters list, and those who are not, they should be eliminated, right? Those who are deceased, their names must be eliminated, right? So this is how we ensure electoral roll management, monitoring the election expenditure, keeps a check on the candidate spending to prevent the undue influence of money. We have moral code of conduct and then electoral roll management for accuracy and inclusiveness. Two words are very important for accuracy and inclusiveness. And monitoring the election expenditure to prevent undue, there is a word, right? So this is called as undue influence of money. Undue influence of money, right? Now what is the challenges? Criminalization of politics is a challenge. With respect to free and fair elections, Can a criminal participate in elections and win the elections and become a member of parliament or member of the state legislative assembly? It is against moral and ethical values, right? So this is a most important term which we have to use is criminalization of politics. Most important and most accurate word which should be used is criminalization of politics and money power, media influence, cyber threats, voter apathy, low vote turnout, and disenfranchisement. They are not voting. Franchise is nothing but the vote. The qualification to vote is what we call it as franchise is to vote. Disenfranchisement. They are not using their voting rights. This is what we call it as voter apathy. It's a harm to the free and fair elections, right? First thing you have to use is criminals are coming, so criminalization of politics. The second thing you must use is the money power. They use money to influence the voters. Illicit money. It is not, it is actually wrong to use money, right? So this is an illicit money. They use illicit money to influence the voters. And the next thing is media influence. They have media influence through which media influence under what you will write under media influence is paid news and then biased media coverage. The terms are very, very important. Criminalization of the politics is a candidate with a criminal background. Then we have power, money power. In money power, you should not mention use of money. You should mention illicit money or unauthorized money, right? Illicit money to influence the voters. Media influence. What does media influence mean? Paid news and biased media coverage. You need to include these words apart from the headings. You need to include these words. You cannot mention that the news channels are favored towards certain political parties. You should not write in such a manner. You should mention there is paid news and biased media coverage. These are the keywords, and these keywords you must mention. And cyber threats. Cyber threats are related to EVMs and VVPATs, right? Voter apathy, you have to mention low voter turnout and disenfranchisement is people not exercising their voting rights is what we call it as disenfranchisement. Now, articles and amendments, right? Articles is relevant constitutional articles. We already mentioned 3, 2, 4. Whenever we saw 3, 2, 4, we should ECI, right? 61st Constitutional Amendment Act of 1988. So 6188. It's difficult to remember, but you need to remember that 61st Constitutional Amendment Act 1888. 18 years, 2 1 is there, right? So 6 1 from 21 years to 8 8 is 18 years. 21 to 18 years. This is how you can have a clue like 61, 21 years. 2 to 1988, 18 years. Now, we have few Supreme Court cases which is mandatory to include. The independence of Election Commission is under a case Dhanova versus Union of India 1991. Dhanova versus Union of India 1991. Right. This is related to the independence. The Supreme Court upheld the independence of Election Commission of India. PUCL versus Union of India 2003. PUCL versus Union of India, it mandates the disclosure of very important 2003. We also have 91st Constitutional Amendment Act is also 2003, which is related to anti-defection. I just remember while seeing 2003, right? So PUCL versus Union of India is related to criminal antecedents, a candidate's closure of his criminal antecedents, criminal records. You can mention it as criminal records, his assets and his liabilities as well. Now, evaluate the reforms needed in the Election Commission of the India. What are the reforms? First, we can um, just go to the previous questions and what are the hindrances of free and fair elections and what is the reforms needed. Just include all these points. Just remember 5 points or 5 to 6 points and try to write those points related to election commission in all the questions of election commissions, right? You should not write these 5 points in some other topics. This is related to election commission alone. Now what are these 5 points? Sorry, 6 points, right? Criminalization of the politics. So what are the reforms to eliminate? We need to eliminate, we don't need to eliminate, or we can say to decriminalize politics is my first point, and my second point is to prevent illicit money influencing the voters. Next, media influence, right? Unbiased and regulated media. Media cannot be included in the election commission's reforms, but regulation of media could be a reform. Election commission is having the power to regulate media with respect to unbiased and paid news. This is a relevant statement when you are writing about the election commission of India's reforms. And protect from cyber attacks related to EVM and VVPAT. Increasing the voters' turnout through moral persuasion. Now, apart from that, what all the points we can include? Okay, reforms needed for the functioning of Election Commission of India to enhance the credibility of electoral process. State funding of the elections to reduce the influence of the money. We saw we need to reduce the influence of the money, but I need to reduce, for example, I need to reduce wage. This is an objective which I want to achieve. But what is the way or means to achieve it? To diet and exercise, right? This is what they had mentioned here. We need to reduce the influence of money. But how do we reduce the influence of the money? When the state funding funds the elections, this reduces the influence of money power. State funding of elections is needed. All the election expenses is taken by the state, right? Decriminalization of the politics we have seen. Now, what is the way of decriminalization of the politics? Bar the candidates. We need to bar the candidates with serious criminal charges, right? We need to bar the candidates who are having serious criminal charges. Okay, transparent funding. Strict regulation and transparency in political donations. We can include the Supreme Court case which has cancelled the electoral bonds. Strengthening of the moral code of conduct which is binding, legally binding. Right? How do you strengthen the moral code of conduct? By making it legally binding. It's very important that it is legally binding. Right. Now, internal democracy in the politics, enforcing internal democracy within the politics, use of technology, enhancing technology for the voter registration, voting, and even the counting processes. We can bring technology. Independence of Election Commission of the India from executive interference. We have Article 3, 2, 4, where the powers and functions of the Election Commission are being mentioned, and 255 Law Commission 2015, 255, 255th Law Commission 2015. Okay, 2015. It recommended the electoral reforms. This alone is important and very important. You have to remember 324 is Article 255 is 2015 Law Commission's report which recommended electoral reforms, and certain Supreme Court cases is PUCL versus Union of India. PUCL versus Union of India, where compulsory or mandatory disclosure of the criminal records, assets and liabilities. Liabilities is the loans which they have to repay. These are very important. Then we have Supreme Court cases is Subramaniam Swamy versus Election Commission of India 2013. PUCL case is 2003. You need to remember the year also. So Subramania Swamy versus Union of India is 2013. 2003, 2013 are the years which we need to remember. Right. This is Election Commission's decision on the PVPATs with EVMs for transparency. VVPAT and EVM for transparency. This is the case, right? Election Commission's decision on using the VVPATs with EVMs. This is used with the EVMs. For the transparency. Now we have a 1998 case. We have 1991 case also, right? Related to uphold the independence of Election Commission is Danova versus Union of India. We have a 1998 case. This is important. Vineet Narain versus Union of India. This is an important case. Vineet Narain versus Union of India, 1998. Discuss the need for the independent institutions free from the executive control. This is actually a point of reform, right? Election Commission's independent from executive control is nothing but the control of the independence from the executive control. The executives are nothing but Prime Minister is an executive council of ministers belong to the executives, right? Now, independence of election commission is crucial for the democratic processes in the India. No, you can almost use similar points for reforms and free and fair elections. But when it comes to independence of election commission, you need to think about the election commissioners and how can you work freely. You can work freely when there is a security of tenure and when there is non-removability, right? The independence ensured by Article 324 has given the power of the Election Commission to supervise, control, and direct elections, right? So, Article 324 provides for an independent election commission. This article in itself is providing for an independent election commission. We go for Article 3, 2, and 4, which provides, you need to write that this article provides an independent election commission. They have a security of the tenure. Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners have security of tenure. Right. Because of this security of the tenure only, they have independence. Right. One more important thing, they hold an office for a period of 6 years or 65, whichever is earlier, and they are not eligible for appointment to any other government services. This also you need to mention. You cannot remove them because their manner is similar to the removal of the Supreme Court judge. Their importance is independence. The importance of independence is needed for free and fair elections, neutrality, credibility. Right. Because there needs to be a free and fair elections to ensure unbiased conduct of the elections, to maintain moral code of conduct free and fair elections, for neutrality prevents the influence by the ruling party. The ruling party can influence the election commissions. The ruling party alone can win the next elections, right? That doesn't ensure a free and fair election. So we need to ensure free and fair elections, moral code of conduct, and influenced by the ruling party. This we mentioned it as a neutrality is the term which we use. Neutrality, and then they also have credibility. They have accountability. They maintain public confidence. They have a good credibility, right? Maintains public confidence in electoral outcomes. Challenges his appointment process, lacks transparency, and the potential for executive influence. Now, here we need to mention the appointment of election commission. How do they appoint? They are appointed by, it's very simple, a appointment committee which is consisting of prime minister, leader of opposition, then a cabinet minister, union cabinet minister. Three members are included in appointment. So here 2:1 majority where prime minister and cabinet minister, they obviously choose one person, right? Their appointment lacks transparency. They are not appointed by a fair committee because you go for a 2:1 majority. The the Chief Justice of India must be included in the appointment of election commissioner. Now, here, the appointment of election commission, you can go for a 2:1 majority, right? Their appointment process is lacking transparency and potential. They select the list of people. They select chief election commissioners, and send a list to the president. President appoints the list of people who are chosen by the appointment committee, and the appointment committee consists of prime minister, cabinet minister, leader of opposition. So the appointment process lacks transparency and there is a potential for executive influence. Resource allocation. It is dependent on the government for financial resources. Executive interference. Instances of alleged executive interference in ECI's functioning. Relevance of constitutional articles amendments. We know these articles. There is a removal procedure. It is mentioned in 324 and 5 is the removal, right? 3245 is related to removal. Powers and functions, the superintendence and the independence of the Election Commission of India. We have Supreme Court, very important case. Two cases are very important. So previously also we have seen PUCL case and Subramania Swamy case is related to VVPAT EVM. PUCL case is related to the criminal records, disclosure of criminal records, assets, etc. Then we also have another case in 1998, Vineet Narain case, which ensured the independence of election commission. T.N. Sheshan is 1995. T.N. Sheshan is this Union of India reinforce the authority and independence of the election commission. This is most important. T.N. Sheshan versus Union of India 1995. Union of India versus Association for Democratic Reforms highlighted the importance of electoral transparency is needed in the election. That is why we have VVPAT for greater transparency. Union of India versus Association for Democratic Reforms 2002. Now, explain the process of appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner and election commissioners. Should there be a need in their appointment? P Article 234.2 is mentioning. So we have 234 sorry, 324. I am pronouncing it wrongly. 3242. 324 5 mentions about the removal of Election Commission of India, which is similar to the Supreme Court judge. 324 2 is related to the appointment. The president appoints a chief election commissioner and other election commissioners. Okay, as I already told you, there is no select provision for choosing the authorities mentioned in the constitution. Okay, but we have a selection committee which consists of prime minister, cabinet minister, leader of opposition party, Lok Sabha, to ensure transparency, merit-based selection, and for a fixed tenure for ensuring a fixed tenure for consistency and stability. Right. First, in transparency, we need to establish an collegium system or select committee for appointments. Here, this select committee has only executive. Therefore, we have executive interference. We can include Supreme Court judges, Chief Justice of India in selection commission. Right. Relevant constitutional articles is two is they are appointed by the president. Sham Sundar versus Union of India highlighted the reforms on the appointment. And for reforms on the appointment, we have Sham Sundar 2003. Yes, 3. Okay, Sham Sundar 2003. This highlighted the reforms in the appointment processes of Election Commission of India and Chief Election Commissioners. Vineet Narain emphasized the independent appointments for key institutions. Now, the last question, how does the Election Commission address the issue of electoral malpractices and violations of moral code of conduct? Moral code of conduct is regulation of the campaign activities. So, what does MCC? Is nothing but the regulation. It is the regulation of campaign. The campaign is being regulated. The regulation of the campaign activities. The campaign activities is being regulated. So, what is moral code of conduct? The moral code of conduct is nothing but a regulation of the campaign activities, guidelines is for political parties and candidates on ethical campaigning. The use of government resources. Prohibition on the use of government resources for electioneering. Here you can use Indira Gandhi case versus Raj Narain, where the use of government resources, the prime minister candidate was being removed, right? Indira Gandhi was removed from the prime minister candidate because she used government resources. Raj Narain case, this is 1975. So, use of government resources, there is a prohibition on the use of government resources for electioneering and electioneering practices. Regulation of the campaign speeches, rallies, and even the advertisements are being regulated. So, the moral code of conduct is regulating the campaign activities, is nothing but a campaign. They speak in the campaign, they go for a rally, and then there is an advertisement. So speech, rally, and then we have advertisement. Use of government resources is being used. Mechanisms to address the malpractices. Monitoring, enforcement, and legal actions and making moral code of conduct legally binding is another important thing. You have to make moral code of conduct legally binding, right? Monitoring is deployment of observers and surveillance teams. Enforcement, issuance of notices and warnings for violations. Legal actions is filing the FIRs and disqualification of the candidates in several cases. Filing FIRs is done, but disqualification is not done in most of the cases because there is no disqualification or very less disqualification for moral code of conduct. So there needs to be a legal enforcement also. First, you have to monitor is when you deploy the of observers and surveillance teams. You need to go for the enforcement. issuance of notices and warnings for violations. And legal actions must be taken, like filing FIRs and disqualification of the candidates. Varanasi case 2014, Election Commission took action against parties for violating moral code of conduct during Lok Sabha. This is first example. And Tamil Nadu Election Assembly 2016, cash meant for buying vote and cancelled elections in two constituencies. The elections are cancelled in two constituencies. Cancellation of the elections, right? In the constituencies. Now, article we know Supreme Court Subramaniam for electoral promises and even for freebies. This is Subramaniam Balaji, not Subramaniam Swami 2015. Subramaniam Balaji. Balaji is 2013. Right. Address the issues related to the electoral, they do promises. And during election, they give freebies. So, electoral promises and freebies. Union of India versus Harsh Mandar discuss EC's role in curbing the electoral malpractices and maintaining moral code of conduct. Can use one case, Subramaniam Balaji versus Government of India, where the Supreme Court addressed, so where there has been addressal of the issue of electoral promises and freebies.